I'm Garett. Thanks for having me here today. Before we talk about the ways to best utilize our professional community, let's clarify why. Why do we want to leverage our programming community? One great benefit is that utilizing the community makes us part of that community, and community offers new friendships, provides a support system, and gives us a sense of belonging. Not to be underestimated when you make yourself vulnerable by learning something new and exposing your ignorance. But another great answer is that our community knows a lot more things than we do. After all, there are many in a community and there's only one of us. And since we all want to grow, learn, and become experts at our craft, there's a lot to learn from our peers. They have answers, we have questions. So this talk is titled Getting the Most from Your Coding Community, but a lot of its content will feel like a talk called Getting All Your Programming Questions Answered. I'll divide it into 3 parts, even though it's a lightning talk. Where to go with all your questions, what to do when you're ready to ask, and how to get those questions answered. I'll start with the easiest section, where to go. If you're listening to me give this talk, then you know about technology meetups. Out of curiosity, did anyone learn about this meetup not on meetup.com? A couple? Where'd you learn about this meetup?
Vice president of my company.
Oh, cool. So word of mouth. Any other thing besides word of mouth for anybody? Okay. Well, here's the obvious. There's no end to the amount of events that you can find and attend at meetup.com. These are the places where to get your ask your best questions, the ones that continue to feel unresolved in your mind. It's smart to take short notes at these because you don't get a chat history to scroll back and look at. You can't find everything you need on meetup.com. You might check out Hippopotamus's event page. It may pick up something Meetup doesn't on occasion. Does anybody know anything else off the top of their heads in Atlanta where they might find hackathons and conferences that aren't all one-offs? Is there any other source anybody uses? Cool. Meetup.com. Slack is an excellent tool for getting guidance. Personally, I've gotten more help from Atlanta's Tech 404 Slack group than any other place. If you live in Atlanta and you've ever had a question about code, sign up right now. But that's not the only place to go. There's no end to the amount of tech communities on Slack. There are developers online ready to answer your questions 24 hours a day. There's always a place to go. To see a list of some of the many Slack groups out there, type Slack groups into Google and click on this link. Some of you might have thought right away I might mention Stack Overflow. And it can be a great resource, but I advise if you're in your first 6 months of learning your first programming language, that you only use Stack Overflow more as a research tool. A lot of you probably know why I'm saying this, but let me be precise. Nothing deters a new learner more than feedback that implies their question is in some way stupid. We make ourselves vulnerable when we ask for help. Since Stack Overflow often points out how badly worded or phrased your question is, due to the lack of understanding of the underlying principles, it can do unnecessary harm to a beginner's confidence and motivation, even if you're not a beginner. I mean, you're asking a question because you don't understand, but most of us know this. All right, so this is really brief. This list is not comprehensive. I didn't mention IRC, Reddit, or other things like long hackathons, conferences, and special events. But using these resources can easily fill up all of your available time. Next, we'll talk about when you are ready to ask those questions, but perhaps more precisely, figuring out what you need to do before you use up your question quota. Have you done your research? When starting out, it's very hard to answer this question, so let's break down some ways to get prepared to ask your questions. Have you read all the documentation about the tool or term you are having problems with? If it's a question about a programming language, go to their docs. If it's a question about an open source tool, go to their GitHub, which probably links to their docs. Question about a framework, go to their documentation. The documentation didn't make sense, or you're having trouble identifying the exact problem. Try typing your question into Google and hitting the first Stack Overflow link. Was it a question about an error? Do the same, just dump the error into Google. Or you can search directly from Stack Overflow and related articles. Still no luck, jump back to Google and start browsing some blog posts that look related. Some are super long, Command F is your friend, be as resourceful as you can. If you feel fluent in the language you're writing in, sometimes going straight to the source code can be very helpful. If you had success figuring out things this way before, then head straight there. But Garett, Every search leads me to a bunch of other confusing terms I've never seen before, and I cannot place where my problem fits within a huge pile of shit. I've felt like this many times when I was doing a lot of learning, as I still do. Hopefully, since you've done your research, even if you didn't get an answer, you're a lot more well-informed to ask a much better question. Sounds like you might be ready. Oh, let's rubber duck it first. Actually, when I was studying programming, when I started studying programming, it's cutting it up a little bit. I didn't know what rubber ducking was for the first 4 or 5 months. And I think everyone just thinks everybody knows. So let's go over it really quickly. Rubber ducking is a reference from the pragmatic programmer in which a programmer would carry around a rubber duck and debug their code by forcing themselves to explain it line by line to the duck. You might want to couple this with writing out your question as detailed as possible. You may discover that it's really hard to vocalize or write your problem. When I realize I'm typing something I don't understand, it often leads me to a new Google search, takes me down my research cycle again, and may land me to a solution with not needing to use up some of my question quota. If your question involves debugging, here are just a couple great resources for strategies to approach that issue. I've upselled some of these approaches from this section of the talk, and I think Toby wrote this first one, Debug School. All right, now you're probably ready to ask your question. Sometimes you feel like you don't have enough time for all that research and you want to cut to the chase. That's up to you. It's good to do your research beforehand, though. When starting out, one of the best things you can do is keeping a list of all of your questions. Keep adding to the list and keep working on getting all those questions answered. This is super helpful in building that architecture in your brain. All right, so we talked quickly about where we can go with questions, what we do when we're ready to ask them. So how do we get all these questions answered? How do we frame these queries and utilize our coding community? The way you may ask questions in person, like at a meetup, depends on the style of the get-together. And if the meetup contains presentations like this one, wait until you've landed at the hangout afterwards to ask anything about personal projects. This can be an excellent time to get career advice as well. If your meetup is simply a hangout, just like after a presentation, you can receive some good detailed instruction. Before you launch into your list of quandaries, you might want to check with your acquaintance to see if it's okay to get technical. I guarantee the leader of the meetup is going to be happy to answer any questions you have. We're talking, and I mean, what I'm really talking here this whole time is free education as well, which is great. Then there are the meetups that are just about getting your questions answered. And this is the place that you want to take that list of questions and just talk through every single one of them and make sure you understand what an AJAX request is or whatever your questions are. Just let them pile up and get them answered. But meetups can be far away. You might be working, you might have a family, or you're simply exhausted because you work and you've had way too much to do over the day. In which case you go online. When asking questions online, you want to be as detailed as possible, yet still boil your question down to the essential information. Maybe you've heard of the XY problem. The XY problem is asking about your attempted solution rather than your actual problem. That is, you're trying to solve problem X and you think solution Y is going to work. So instead of asking about X, you ask about Y. And that wastes a lot of time. Try to avoid falling into this trap. Always include information about the broader picture and your attempted solution. If you have a pretty intricate question, the best thing you can do is create a gist of all your associated files. Alternatively, you could set up a JS fiddle, a CodePen, or a clunker of the issue. The goal is to make the question as easy to reply to as possible. If you want help, you got to make it easy for people to help you. If you're using Slack to ask questions, and I really hope you are, spend some time getting to know the interface. I'm always very surprised by the people that are on Slack every day that don't know about its basic functionality. Know how many ticks it takes for inline code versus a code snippet. Check out the unique channels and pin posts and get more information about the channel's theme. Absolutely edit your posts for spelling and grammar errors. There's no reason to clog up a chat feed with asterisk fixed spellings. Just edit your posts to show the attention that you're putting into your inquiry. Clean code, clean questions. If in doubt, create a new channel, totally free to do so, and experiment with various tools Slack has to offer. For instance, you can edit your preferences, direct message someone, add a Giphy, leave or mute a channel, invite someone to join, or even set reminders for yourself and others using / commands. And one great trick for getting a quick response to a question that you're dying to get answered is posting your question in more than one group. Not necessarily more than one channel, but more than one group. When someone starts giving you a response, be sure to go back and delete your other postings, because you don't want to be talking to more than one person at once. The most important thing when getting assistance in a chat room is to be responsive. Give your helper your undivided attention, and do not take it personally if they leave or get distracted. They don't owe you anything, they're probably working, and you're lucky to get any help. Let your responder take you wherever they want, even if it opens up a lot more questions or issues about your code. You don't have to take their advice, but you're taking the time to ask questions to fix or improve your work, and you might have to backtrack a while to get to the root of your misconception. Regardless of the platform, be attentive in your feedback. If you don't understand something, be specific about the misunderstanding and immediately address it. For instance, oh, I know what you mean by X, Y, and Z, but I don't know what you mean by Q. Just like break it apart and let them know that you're following along, even if you don't understand what they're trying to tell you. Afterwards, be grateful and genuine. Thank everyone who participated, whether they were helpful or not, because being successful in any field means building good relationships with all whom you interact. The golden rule, treat others how you'd like to be treated, is great to keep in mind. All right, here are some links that help me compose that last section. The first is where you can go to learn a million more things about getting around Slack. And the second is a great article by Eric Raymond called How to Ask Questions the Smart Way. It goes into great detail about this skill. And that's it. Get familiar with your local meetups, Slack and Stack Overflow. Do your research and rubber duck before you ask your questions. And be considerate and thorough when talking with your peers and colleagues. I'll post these slides in the JavaScript channel, in Tech 404, or wherever else they might be wanted. Thanks for having me here.